Hello, everyone. I'm really excited this afternoon to have Dr. Teh as one of my guests for my video interview. Dr. Teh and I have met before, and we've discussed one of my favorite topics that I've been trying to push for since I joined the Legislative Yuan, which is the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Dr. Teh joined the MAS from the World Bank in 1981, and for many years he held concurrently senior positions in MAS and GIC. And he now serves on several corporations and non-for-profit organizations, either as chairman or a board member or an advisor. And I actually have today this book, 50 Secret Successes of Singapore. Actually, Dr. Teh wrote the chapter on the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I was hoping you could talk to a wider audience today about your experiences with GIC.
The context behind GIC was that Singapore, if you look at the book called World Vision, it gives you the origin of GIC. And in fact, you spend a lot of time on what I call the prologue, Singapore actually, even at the earlier level, has been managing foreign reserves, okay? But before GIC was formed, the foreign reserves was totally managed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is the country's de facto central bank. At that time, most of our foreign reserves of assets were invested in fixed income, mainly government bonds, primarily the US, but also some of the other countries as well. If you recall, at the end, in the late 1970s, the world was undergoing very high inflation. Okay, and so there was Dr. Goh Keng Swee, who is the right-hand person of Lee Kuan Yew when it comes to economic matters. He was one of the three founders of Singapore. Took the view that Singapore by then had enough foreign exchange reserves to buffer itself against exchange rate fluctuations or against capital flows, short-term capital flows that is usually under the central bank, and that there's a need to get a higher income from our foreign assets. And the only way to do it is not just to focus investing in fixed income of the kind of assets that the central bank does, but to invest in longer term assets like equity, real estates, venture capital, and similar assets which are longer term. And so 1981, with the support of the then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, maybe 20 billion of the assets over the GIC and set it up. And over the years, it has grown very much to what it is today, in terms of size, in terms of complexity, in terms of overseas officers and so on. And I would say that apart from earning a higher returns so you have three sources of income for the government from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. One is from GIC, one is from Temasek, and the other is from MAS. And collectively, these three organizations contribute to government's budget revenue. It's the single biggest contributor now every year to government budget revenue. So the benefit of having the source of overseas assets and income from government is that it doesn't have to increase taxation within the country as much. The intent is really to get a higher rate of return from our overseas assets. We are quite careful in terms of risk adjustment. So we have built up a battery of professionals, well compensated, because that's the only way to attract them to work for us. I would say at the senior levels, there's still a sense of mission that not only are they doing relatively well for themselves, but they are also doing good for the country. They're doing something worthwhile. And the connectivity and the learning they have made as a result also enhance Singapore in ways that is difficult to describe, but nevertheless very real. So to sort of sum it up, the most important thing is that we have now with GIC, plus the other two, providing the government with a very important source of revenue every year, that allows the government to spend on a whole variety of things, like on welfare, on defense, on healthcare, on transportation and a whole variety of things, right? At the same time, it helps to enable us to have outreach, connectivity, to learn from a lot of people, highly talented people all over the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teh. I think just to respond to what you've said is that, when I've looked at the book on 50 successes, what really struck me was on page 32 and how similar it is to Taiwan's situation today when it was mentioned about the circumstances that created GIC. The reason why that when I joined Parliament late last year, my initiative was actually to modify the Central Bank Act to take out 10% of their current savings, which is 55 billion and 555 billion, which is currently also the fourth largest foreign reserve in the world, mainly in bonds, to set up an independent corporation and then have central bank go back and discuss with the finer designs of it and report back to Parliament. When you mentioned about not increasing taxes, I think that's also, for me, is very exciting, because one of the things I also thought about is that, Taiwan has a very homogenous population. We don't really have a lot of overseas skilled workers like Singapore or Hong Kong or London, for the matter. And so we also have currently the lowest birth rate in the world, something we're not proud of. Our government has said it's already to a point of national crises. And so if you're talking about a population that is dwindling, homogenous population where the economy is not growing, and you're sitting on a whole pile of cash that has been making financial returns below inflation, that's a sovereign wealth fund makes a lot of sense. 在中国在讲躺平然后新加坡讲躺赢，就是因为这个时候 you've prepared for 30 years to make Singapore the financial center it is today, and GIC obviously has a role to play. So I'd love to know about GIC's investment, how you design and attract talent, and how you incentivize them.
We are very open to recruiting foreign talent. And we make sure that we are able to pay a competitive salary. We wouldn't be able to pay as much as the private sector, but the private sector has, they have to go and raise money, whereas in the case of GIC, the money comes from the government. You don't have to worry about fundraising. Yeah. Your job is to invest the money well. And I would say for Singaporeans, at least, and even I would say for those who have worked with us, there's also a sense of mission. They are doing something, good. And also doing well for yourself. It's not going to make you, how do I put it? It's going to make you very rich, but you'll be comfortable. In this world, as you know now, there's tremendous competition for talent at a certain level. So I think it's finally bad. And also I would say that you don't hear of too many corruption situations in GIC, partly because we pay well, to sort of alleviate that. And also because Singapore has a pretty stern system where if you are found to be corrupt, no matter who you are, you get punished for it. And there are no exceptions.
Which is very normal. But I think in Taiwan at the moment, my understanding is that these 5 funds that our government has are all run by civil servants. So they have civil servants immunity. And so they don't get paid a lot, but they don't get fined if they don't perform well. And so... And it's all mainly domestic investments. And Taiwan 就这么大而已，投资的东西就只能这么多。And in fact, 在这边这么小，可能大家认识人 all these connections and lack of transparency， 可能反而弊案会比较容易发生。这个方法的话，我是觉得说 for sovereign wealth fund， 因为全世界现在有180几档主权基金，像新加坡你就有 GIC and Temasek, right? So there's actually many banks and law firms that have sovereign wealth fund departments and advisors who can set this up very quickly in a very transparent and efficient manner, depending on how we want to structure it. 所以其实我也觉得说新加坡很厉害，就是1981年花8个月的时间就一个决心，那时候你的副总理Dr. Go 就把它 set up， and then 台湾讲了17年，从2007年到现在还没成。So but thank you so much for your time and sharing this with us today. I think this is great for my audience, just for those who don't know about sovereign wealth funds and what possibilities it can bring. It's very helpful. Thank you so much for your time.